She stayed silent for 9 days. And when Caitlin Clark finally spoke, she said something nobody expected. A fist to the throat. No whistle. No foul call. And the biggest star in women's basketball lying on the hardwood while the referee standing right next to her looked the other way. This is the story of the hit that split the WNBA in half, and the 9 days of silence that followed it. Stick around, because by the end of this video you're going to hear exactly what Caitlin Clark said when she finally broke that silence, and it is not what either side of this argument wanted to hear. Before we get into it, if you're new here, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because this story is still developing and we will be tracking every update as it comes. Let's set the scene. Late June 2026. The Indiana Fever are hosting the Phoenix Mercury at Gainbridge Fieldhouse. These two teams had already met just 2 nights earlier, and that game alone was a warning sign. Officials handed out 6 technical fouls and 1 ejection in a single night. Caitlin Clark picked up her 5th technical of the season. Alyssa Thomas picked one up too. The tension between these two teams was not hiding. It was sitting right there in plain sight, and everybody who was watching knew something was building. Then came June 24th. Midway through the second quarter, with 6 minutes and 52 seconds left, the ball got loose. Players scrambled for it on the floor, the way they do a dozen times a game, nothing unusual. Alyssa Thomas ended up on top of Caitlin Clark in that scramble. And then the video shows something that should never happen in a basketball game. Thomas drove her fist into Clark's throat. Not a stray elbow. Not incidental contact in a pile of bodies fighting for a loose ball. A fist to the throat of the player lying underneath her. No whistle blew. Play continued. Thomas got back up and the game moved on like nothing had happened at all. But something had happened. And within minutes, clips of that moment were already spreading online. Fans slowed the footage down, zoomed in, and asked the same question over and over. How does a referee standing 3 feet away not call that? Here's where it gets interesting, because this isn't a story where the league just buried its head in the sand. Indiana's head coach, Stephanie White, didn't find out about the full severity of the play in real time either. She was alerted to what had happened to Clark's neck at halftime, and she went straight to the officials about it. She didn't hold back afterward. White told reporters it was egregious, and that it was disrespectful, and she made it clear the call should have been made the moment it happened, not after the fact. And that's exactly what happened next. The very next day, the WNBA did something you don't see very often. They went back and reviewed the play after the final buzzer had already sounded, and they upgraded the no call. Alyssa Thomas was hit with a flagrant foul too and handed a 1-game suspension. The league's official statement said Thomas recklessly made contact with her fist to the throat area of Clark, calling it a non-basketball act. 1 game. That was the punishment for a fist to the throat of the most watched player in the league. And if you think the reaction to that was calm and measured, you have not been paying attention to this fanbase. Now here's where the story gets its second gut punch, because the neck hit wasn't even the play that ended Clark's night. During that same game, in a separate incident, Clark went down again and left the contest with a back injury. She would not play again for over a week. Her coach was already furious about the neck hit not being called, now her franchise player was walking off the floor hurt, and there were 2 plays in one night that had fans asking the exact same question. Where is the protection for this player? Let's pause here for a second, because I want you to sit with how big this actually is, not just emotionally, but financially. This isn't the first time this season Clark has been on the wrong end of a hard, uncalled or late-called foul. Earlier in the year, Chindi Carter knocked her to the floor with a check that was initially ruled a common foul before the league upgraded it. Then Carter's own teammate, Angel Reese, hit Clark in the head on a block attempt in a different game, and that one was also upgraded to a flagrant after review. So by the time the Alyssa Thomas play happened, this wasn't an isolated incident anymore. This was a pattern that fans, coaches, and now the league office itself kept having to clean up after the whistle had already stayed silent. And stick with me here, because there's a twist coming from Alyssa Thomas herself that changes the entire shape of this story, but we'll get to that in a moment. Think about what Caitlin Clark actually means to this league in dollars and cents for a second. One widely cited estimate puts her responsible for roughly a quarter of the entire WNBA's total revenue in 2024. Not a quarter of the Fever's revenue. A quarter of the entire league's. Sellout crowds follow her on the road. Television deals are built around her presence. When people talk about the WNBA's biggest year ever, they are, whether the league wants to say it out loud or not, largely talking about the Caitlin Clark effect. So when a night ends with her on the floor, holding her throat, and a whistle that never came, it isn't just a basketball story. It's a story with real financial stakes attached to it. Now here's the part of this story that most people online missed completely, because they stopped paying attention after the suspension was announced. Alyssa Thomas did not just take the punishment and go quiet. In the days that followed, she and her family say they received threats, and Thomas said she'd been targeted with racial slurs by furious fans online. Speaking to reporters, Thomas drew a hard line between fans being upset about a play and what she was actually receiving, calling it outright hatred over what she described as a genuine accident. She also said the league needs to do a better job protecting players like her from that kind of backlash. Sit with that for a second, because it complicates the story fans thought they understood. This wasn't a clean villain and victim narrative anymore. You had one player on the floor with an injury and a fist to the throat, and another player, days later, saying she and her family were now living through threats and slurs over a single basketball play. Two very real, very human consequences, coming out of one 9-second clip. And through all of this, 9 full days, the one voice everybody was waiting to hear stayed completely silent. Caitlin Clark said nothing. No statement. No interview. No social media post. She missed the following game entirely because of her back injury, and while the entire sports world argued about her on her behalf, she simply wasn't in the conversation. That silence became its own story. Commentators filled the gap with theories. Was the league protecting its stars from harder physical play? Was Clark being specifically targeted because of her rookie-era success? Was this really about basketball at all, or about jealousy in the locker room? Everybody had an opinion. The one person who actually lived through it hadn't said a word. So here's your suspense moment for this video, because when Clark finally did speak, 9 days later, in a statement that ran more than 5 minutes long, what she said did not fit neatly into either side of the argument that had been raging online. Keep watching, because her actual words are coming up, and they might surprise you more than the hit itself did. Let's get into exactly what she said. Facing reporters for the first time since the injury, Clark opened by addressing the exact question everyone had been waiting on. She said plainly that she agreed the play should have been ruled a flagrant foul, and that the league's officiating needs to improve. She didn't stop there. She acknowledged how difficult the job of officiating actually is, calling it one of the hardest roles in the world, a job where you're constantly criticized no matter the call you make. That's not the sound of someone looking for a scapegoat. That's someone trying to hold two things true at once: the play was wrong, and the person who missed it is human. Then Clark turned the conversation towards something bigger than just her own situation. She said the league has to do a better job protecting its players, full stop, not just her, but everyone on the floor. And then, without naming anyone directly, she addressed the reports that Alyssa Thomas had been receiving threats. Clark said the harassment and the hate has to stop, and that it applies just as much to opposing players as it does to her own teammates and coaches. She made it clear that nobody's character should be under attack the way it had been online. That's the twist most headlines buried. The player who took the fist to the throat used her own platform, 9 days later, to publicly defend the player who threw it, not from criticism of the play itself, which she agreed was a flagrant foul, but from the wave of personal hatred that followed it. Clark closed her statement by admitting something that a lot of fans weren't expecting either. She said she understood why this play kept getting replayed and debated across every sports show in the country, but she also felt like all of that noise was pulling attention away from the actual games being played on the court. In other words, even the player at the center of the biggest controversy in the league this year was ready to move on before a lot of her own fans were. Meanwhile, back on the Fever's side, team president Kelly Krauskopf issued a statement after the league's ruling making clear that players' safety has to be the top priority for this league, and that the organization's full focus was on getting Clark healthy and getting the team ready for its next game. So where does this actually leave the WNBA? You've got a league that upgraded a no-call into a flagrant foul and a suspension within 24 hours, which tells you they knew exactly how serious this was. You've got a franchise player who agreed the punishment should have come faster, but who refused to feed the anger being aimed at the player who hit her. And you've got a defender who says she's now dealing with real-world threats over a single split-second decision on a basketball court. There's no version of this where everybody walks away satisfied. Fans who wanted a longer suspension didn't get one. Fans who thought Thomas was being unfairly piled on got, in a strange twist, Clark herself pushing back on the hate directed at her. And the league is still left with the exact same question hanging over it going into the rest of the season: how many more of these nights can happen before officiating in this league has to change for good? Now I want to hear from you directly, because this is exactly the kind of story where the comments section usually splits right down the middle. Do you think a one-game suspension was enough for that play? Do you think Caitlin Clark handled this the right way by defending Thomas from the harassment while still calling out the missed call? And do you think this pattern of hard, late-reviewed fouls is something the league can actually fix, or is physical play like this just part of the WNBA now? Drop your honest take in the comments below, because these conversations are exactly what keeps this story moving. If this breakdown helped you actually understand what happened instead of just watching a 9-second clip out of context, do me a favor and hit that like button. It genuinely helps this video reach more people who are trying to make sense of this too. And if you haven't already, subscribe and turn on notifications, because this season is far from over, and there is a very good chance we are not done talking about officiating in this league by the time the playoffs roll around. Thanks for watching all the way through. We'll see you in the next one.